Previously on this channel we saw that you were quite interested in my pilot pics, which I mentioned in my previous video about soldier pigs. Since you insisted so much on making the pilots, and also planes for them, this video is practically dedicated to that. It was mathematically impossible to print, I have to say. So I'd appreciate if you like it and subscribe it and click on the notification bell, because it took much longer than I expected to do all of this. It's not easy to translate a model that seems to work as a render into something 3D printable. And it took 3 times longer than I anticipated. So I'd appreciate a like again. Anyway, this video is about all of this. It's a tutorial of how to paint these things, how my thought process works or does not work at the time of creating my stuff, and maybe you could find something interesting on it, who knows. Also to inspire you, so that you have ideas and know a little bit about where you can go when doing a project like this related to airplanes, because painting airplanes is not the same as painting tanks. Generally, you cannot make the same mistakes. It's also to show you that these planes, well, I'm not inside your head, and sometimes I'm not inside mine either. I created them in a hyper-modular way, so you can put whatever you want inside them, or put the pilot's piece outside or inside, or whatever you like. But first things first, let's talk about the design. As usual with my little pigs, the main designer I have in mind is Hayao Miyazaki, who takes references from historical things and anime. For example, this is a P-40 Warhawk, an American fighter plane from World War II, with a more or less normal configuration. It had a V12 Allison engine, if I'm not wrong. And this, which it doesn't look normal at all, it's an XP-55, which is an experimental aircraft because the idea was to test super maneuverability in World War II. Among other things, it also allows for a tricycle style landing gear. This allows to land and take off while seeing the runway without crashing, which is very practical. This configuration also allows for a lot of cannons and machine guns at the front, which are useful for another things. This, for example, is no longer American. This is a German Dornier DOE. This has a configuration with an engine at the front and another at the back. I also used this idea, but instead of the cannons in the front, they are in the wings, which is what I wanted. And this is the J7W1, yes, with a name. And this Japanese plane has a configuration very similar to the American XP-55, cannons in the front, the engine in the back, but it doesn't have an air intake on the nose because it's where the cannons are. And there is where my idea comes in. My cockpit is the one from the Spitfire. This plane was already super maneuverable in World War II, and I like its cockpit because it had a great visibility, among other things. Also, the elliptical and curved shapes on the fuselage are more than just pretty, they allow the super maneuverability. And also it's called Spitfire because, as you can see, it's Spitfire. Yep. And what I have basically done, it's to change everything's position, because every single anime takes, or manga takes as reference the Japanese J7W1 thing plane. So what you have to do if you want my plane, it's very simple. You should begin by putting the wings, which should be in the front, in the back. Put the tail, which should be in the back, a little higher up, and the tail rather should be in the front. This physical condition is called a canard in French. And among other things, it occurred to me to put a huge grill in the nose because I think there could be a super turbocharger in order to force a massive amount of oxygen to the engine. I think nobody have thought in this before in science fiction, I'm right? But obviously you are not here to see my thought process and my idea to design stuff. You are here because you are in a dire need of NIPPONIUM, and I'm here to provide just that.
Oh, him? Yeah, I know him. It's going to take a while. It happened years ago. Did you know there are 3 kinds of aces? Those who seek strength, those who live for pride, and those who can read the tide of battle. Those are the 3. And him?
He was a fighter pilot they called Solo Wing Pixie. This man was his buddy.
Just look at the view. There's not much difference between those countries from here.
turn into a pig?
All middle-aged men are pigs.
We're coming for you, Porco Rosso!
I'm a pig. I don't fight for honor. I fight for a paycheck.
So, I hope I haven't given you an overdose of NIPPONIUM, and it's time to get to work. Well, here you can see the model that inspired me. It was practically broken and destroyed, and it was an Spitfire. I put some of my pigs next to it, and I thought, this has to be the plane. And well, after modeling and sending it to someone to print it, people who understand how to add supports and how to hollow things so the resin doesn't get trapped inside and make the model explode. Yes, of course, that can happen if you do not design your things properly, and well, that's called resin trap. The model can be deformed or even explode sometimes. So I made the model so it could be separated into several pieces. The fuselage, being large, is stepped, so it can be attached as one piece, and the wings are separated into several pieces also. And now it's time to sand the model, because resin printed models have layering, as well as plastic model had mold lines or metal, I don't know the name, white metal? Models from Games Workshop, for example, they had mold lines. This particular sandpaper was made in 1995, just like me, a year later, and from the USA. I am not from the USA, as you can perceive from my fantastic English. Now it's time to sand the entire model, at least the parts in which the layering are more evident, first with the denser or the bigger grained sandpaper, and later with the fine one. It doesn't matter that in a model like this one or plastic one from World War II planes till, for example, Vietnam helicopters or even in the 80s helicopters, you will have scratches because they are war machines. So both by the process of manufacturing them and the process of war itself, they will have some scratches on the metal, not just in the paint. So don't be afraid of this. And by the way, this one has a chunk of absence on the tail because this one had a fail. That's why it's important to work with other people which understand how to work with resin. Apparently, when I was designing this, I didn't create it. It was a step, it was a void between the rudder and the other part of the plane because I thought it will look better, aesthetically speaking, and yes, it looked better till you try to print it and it's supported to the nothing, and then the printer cannot print that. And then I correct that, and the version that you will print is the one that actually works. So yeah, this is basically to tell you, keep on mind working with other people that understand how to work in their things. That will make your life easier instead of trying to control about absolutely everything. And more or less now everything is done. We will need just to glue the tail to the rest of the fuselage. Again, I have created this kind of escalated in order to click and to work together to allow for you to paint this whatever you want, because painting a cockpit at 1/72 scale, which is more or less this scale, it's usually complicated. But other parts will not fit as good as that one. For example, the propeller with the peg offset propeller, because the propeller itself is a cylinder. This is the type of thing that doesn't matter what you do, will expand. And for that reason I created this cylinder a bit bigger than the actual propeller in order for you to be able to sand this and for the propeller to fit with a thicker connection the propeller with the actual mount of the engine, because you will not like by any means the propeller to fall and break. This is resin. Resin from molds, from resin printing, sometimes can break if they fall to the ground, if they fall to the floor. So yeah. And also right now what I'm using is my light. I have only one light on, and I'm using reflections in order to see where the scratches on the surface are and where they aren't. This is an easy trick. Maybe it will not look super professional, but I use this trick all the time in order to see in my models, both kit bashed, trash bashed, plastic made or resin made, to see if they have the scratches in the places I want or I don't. And for example, here I'm seeing more layering, which looks like my digital prints. I don't want that on the plane. I prefer scratches again. practical example, that is a P-51A Mustang. This is a B-52 Stratofortress. And this is just a normal plane fuselage from whatever plane. As you can see, they had imperfections. Doesn't matter that you have some scratches. Don't break your head as much as me. And for this plane, again, because it was designed in mind to be modular, I created different cockpits. You have a one which is basically a skeleton or a frame without nothing. In order for you to see the pig inside, you have a completely opaque one. Well, in my case opaque because it was printed in the same resin print. If you print this in glass or transparent resin, it should look transparent, probably. And because I had that, what I'm gonna do is to kit bash my own transparent glass. I will use the original one of the Spitfire at 172 and I will kit bash this glass inside of here. But because superglue has the tendency to taint everything with white and ruin absolutely everything, I will have to do something that the Codex Astartes does not contemplate.
The Codex Astartes does not support this action.
And as you can see, right now we have a glossy looking cockpit. Nevertheless, again, because it is at 172 scale, it is not at 132 scale, which is the scale that I like for planes and helicopters. It will make weird reflections and magnification glass kind of things. That's the reason you have different cockpits and windshields for you to glue whatever you want, or just don't glue it if you want to have the different options. For example, if you're gonna print different planes, maybe it's a better idea to not print a gloss one and to print an opaque one and to try to emulate a blue glass, and that's all instead. And again, the doors, for example, of the sides are not glued actually to the model itself because the pigs are fat. They cannot fit if the plane was printed with the doors on them. You need to basically print the plane itself, put later the pig, and that's the reason it was designed like that. You paint the pig before gluing it to the plane, and later thing you glue the doors or the windshield, the complete closed canopy or cockpit or whatever. And here we have the parachute guy. For making this other thing, the cables of the parachute, I have used wire. Why I have used wire and not actual resin? Again, because resin at this really small thing will probably crack. We do not want that on our model. And wire itself had enough malleability in order for it to not break and to be deformed as much as you want. Then I use a lot of super glue to put everything in place, and overall is mostly there. While it's drying, I will glue the rest of the things. As you can see here right now, these are the wings, and between the hydroplane or float plane or boat plane, I don't know how you will call it, and the normal fighter, we have small differences. And this is the elliptical tip of the wing, which you have one for the left side, one for the right side. Keep that on mind, please, because they have different details on top and in the bottom. If you print two elliptical sides from the right, they will not look symmetrically perfect. They can fit, of course, but they have different details. And overall, I also should mention that you should not glue the guns in this very early part of the building and painting, because you will break them. Yep, you should be advised that the cannon's just gonna break, because that's the nature of resin, so keep that in mind. I also will glue this radiator for the wings, which are based on the Spitfire Mark 17 or 20 if I'm not wrong. Again, don't glue the guns, please don't do it. And with the floaters, they are stronger than the cannons, but you should also not glue them on this part of the project, because it's better to glue them after all of the wings will be painted on the plane, because we're gonna make a special kind of paint for the red floating boat plane thing, and we're gonna use a special paint and airbrush for that. And for this reason, it's gonna be easier if you do not have the floaters. And again, you can choose which wing you want. You can print the one which has a hole or the completely filled in order to make the plane to look like it is flying, or for the float plane. And this is the airbrush I was speaking about. Apparently, Gallieri, which is a company, wanted me to send me all of these because I don't know, maybe they liked me. Apparently, yes. And for me, it's fantastic because till this very moment, I was using this airbrush. This airbrush was my old one. I do not even remember the brand, but this one looks just fantastic. And actually, it works pretty nice. More on that later. I just want to mention that I have all of these and also primer, which is black, and also a lot of paints, which, again, all of these work fantastically well. The idea for this project, particularly not only about the planes, was to show you how you can paint all of that with a simple kind of color selection. First of all, using black, the matte black, and I'm gonna use my old airbrush because I just want to test the sturdiness and the paint itself. The primer supposedly self-stabilizes in weird shapes. My planes are filled with weird shapes and curves, and apparently yes, it dries quite nice. And also it will allow me to see, without just using the trick of the light, if it needs some sanding or not. Apparently, this paint can be sanded. Obviously, you should not sand it as if it was wood, because you will remove all the paint. I just want to sand in order to fix some problems that you can actually see on the front of the plane. And I will use the sandpaper, which is less thick, the more soft one. You need to roll it like this. The paint will not look better, but actually you will force the paint and the surface to look better. That's what you want. And because right now I cannot reach well, what I will do, it's this kind of cylindrical shape, because this is a kind of, it's elastic and it will adapt to the shape and it will allow you to sand this better. Again, you could see some lines. Yes, of course, that's for the process of sanding. Now I will paint over it again and it will look better. And again, right now it's time to glue some parts, like for example, the front part of the fuselage to the back one. I will not glue the wheel or the tail because they click almost together without needing to glue right now, but obviously I need to glue the wings, for example, and the canards. You should try to only glue in this model or in every other model only the parts that you will need, because it will make your life easier. Also, I have painted the fighter, not the float plane, not the boat plane, with the black paint, not the primer one, which is glossy. Now I'm gonna make the pre-shading of the red boat plane, and I'm not gonna use my old airbrush because it most probably will work like this. The old airbrush spits paint, the new one does not spit so much paint because probably some engineer have designed this thing because it just looks like the MiG-15 engine, which is awesome, not gonna lie. I think that this kind of helicoidal shape or screw shape allows the paint to move in circles inside the nacelle, and then the paint is sprayed, and as you can see, it is not spitting so much. Sometimes we have small dots of paint, but that's because there is a simple reason for that. It's because there is a thing called thinner, which I was not using. Yeah, as simple as that. Once you use the thinner, then it stops happening. To be honest, I never have used thinner before. Consider that it was for effeminated people, and now I feel stupid because apparently it had a use. Yeah, basically. And I have to say that with the airbrush and the thinner, I really love the experience of painting all of this. Now it is more or less similar to these. Once you have painted everything, and I have to say that I really like the plane in white, it's time to mask some things and also to paint some other parts. I wanted to paint those separately because it will be easier. Once you paint them, glue them on the wings, at least the floaters, and use some masking tape for the elevators and control surfaces. Later, because I am a lazy person, I will shake every single bottle of paint at the same time in this kind of plastic box. That noise is... Once you have gave a good shake to your paint, it's time to find some protection for our hands. You would think that this thing that creates a particular noise will protect you in a dark alleyway in the middle of the night. That's not the type of sound, the type of noise any man is afraid of. Is this sound, the unexperienced latex-gloved hand. And now we can paint. As you can see, first of all, I'm painting my hand, because my hand is replaceable, but my plane is irreplaceable. And I have worked so much in order to achieve this, so I will appreciate if you give a like and subscribe, to be honest. And first of all, I'm gonna give a layer of the first paint, which was called Shine Red, which is not totally red, it's more orange looking. And later, after I painted all of these, covering completely the paint, I will paint a light layer of normal red, basic normal red from the same brand, which in this case was Kaleido Colors, and I have to say that I really like it. And also it has this glossy look, not like the Citadel ones, which gave me the idea to glossify the planes later using varnish. Now it's time to remove the mask from the places in which we have masked, and for example we can see that the elevators and the flaps and everything looks white as we pretended, as we tried, like the Fokker DR1 triplane. If I'm not wrong, that's the Fokker DR1, which was what I had in mind. A Ferrari, by the way, why you in English say Ferrari? It's not as difficult to say Ferrari with two R's. Why it's Ferrari and Carolina Herrera? It's Ferrari. Mamma mia! And later try to remove every single thing that you have put in order to not paint the things that you didn't want to paint. And you will have a really good base in order to paint the rest of the things. After painting all of this, it's time to paint the metallic plane. For painting the metallic plane, I'm gonna do that out of camera, but I'm gonna show you this. For example, why I have painted the fighter plane first with black glossy paint. For a simple reason. Black gloss paint or general gloss in a model will allow that the next layer of paint that you will put look also glossy. In this case, the metallic, and I will paint the plane in gunmetal and stainless steel. And that's the reason I masked these panels, in order for these panels to look more clearer, and later to use the gunmetal for the rest of the plane. I like how the plane is looking, to be honest, and keep in mind what I had to tell you before. Do not glue the guns till the very last moment, because they will break. That's not good, by any means. And this is not just factory error, it's just what happens with resin. Resin at certain scales breaks, for example with antennas, with cannons and whatnot. If you want to have realistic looking antennas and cannons, they are not gonna be super strong. If they look cartoonishly oversized, or maybe they will be sturdier, but also they will be absurdly gigantic, like the gun of a mine battle tank, and I don't want that. And the next step is going to be to make a Luftwaffe looking spiral in this propeller. I will use blue tack and not black masking putty for this reason. What you would see right now is the fact that the blue tack doesn't deforms with time. It's more sturdier. Also, it allows you to do kit bashing, or more than kit bashing, dry fitting, and to see if something convinced you or not, because again it's sticky and doesn't deforms. But this is the black masking putty. As you can see, just by the second it deforms, so it doesn't allow you enough time. It's sticky, it's good for camouflages. But for example, blue tack is also good for this, which is what I was telling you a few seconds ago. This is dry fitting. And this twin-barreled turret made out of a mouse, it's not for a German mouse super heavy tank, but probably for an apocalypse super heavy Soviet tank. Totally not related to the next video. And now it's time to remove the mask from the propellers, and overall I like how it looks. It looks more Luftwaffe right now. It needs a bit of fixing in some places, for example to cover a bit better the paint over some of these mistakes, not so many. It will have been even worse with the black putty because you have to work almost instantly. You can't wait because again it deforms by default. It's what the material is. And now it's time to paint the cockpit. I have used emerald green and sky blue, mixing the two just to create a kind of blue color, blue-green color, which is like the MiG-15 and Mi-24, so it's general Soviet cockpit blue-looking thing. Not because particularly these planes look like MiGs, but because by color choice it looks better. And you have an entire video of how I painted the pigs. For this reason, I'm not gonna paint the pigs in this video because I have followed the same techniques that I have used in my previous video. Just I have used a different color for the glasses, which was a Mig Jimenez periscope color in order to paint periscopes for tanks. And overall, that's all. The orange that I have used for the parachute is the orange that comes with this gallery color, and the brown leather color comes from Citadel technical color. If I'm not wrong, it's snakebite leather. And overall, I like how these pigs look. They are different than the other ones, and you have more than enough in order to create your own little dioramas, to put the two crew repairing things, to put some of the pilots posing, and you have a pilot which has a different U-shaped drive wheel. It's not a drive wheel, a control, instead of the Spitfire looking one, because that one is more generic for you to use in other planes, even in airships. But as you can see, that's the reason the pigs were created in this way, and the doors of the Spitfires, in order for you to paint before gluing anything. Now it's time to wash some things. I will use oil paints to cover the panels, to cover the cockpit, the instruments of the cockpit also, different grills that you will have in the plane, different air intakes or radiators. For the elevators, I'm not gonna use oils, I'm gonna use the acrylics from Games Workshop because I just do not want only to cover the panels, I want to paint the entire surface, and for that reason I will use that. But the positive point of using the oils is the fact that you can use thinner, as you can see right now in the aluminium looking plane, in order to remove some of the excess and to make all of these look a bit better than the crappy result that we have right now. That's one of the things I love oils. They can make your life easier if you can fix that later. After painting all of these, again, use water in order to make the surface tension of the elevators or any material that you are painting a bit more receptive for the next step. That is going to be to use the Agrax Earth Shade in order to paint the surface control things of the plane. Because in real life, these particular parts from these planes of this age, the 1920s, it was aerodynamic cloth, aerodynamic canvas, I'm not sure. The thing is, you have usually an aluminum frame or sometimes even a wood frame, and over that you had a canvas or you had a cloth, not sure. I'm gonna paint out of camera all of these details, which are the wheels, which are also the guns. I have painted the guns with normal black because they, at least the ones of this fighter, because they reflected a lot of light. I do not want that right now. And also, something else I'm going to do is use paint to paint off camera this stuff. The wheels, the gauges, the instrument panel, also the exhausts. I'm going here, as you can see, I have painted the plane exhaust pipes in rust color, because in real life the metal gets very hot, gets rust. I've also painted the gauges of the instrumental panel. You don't need to overcomplicate your life when you are painting something at 1/72 scale. I just paint with black and gloss varnish all of these gauges, and that's it. That's practically all. I have done the same with the red plane, by the way. Now also I have painted the wheels with rubber color. Basically this rubber color, it's originally not rubber color, it is Storm Vermin Fur from Citadel, and also I have black washed the wheels, and then I will use an oil brusher to add more detail, but now nope. And as you can see right now, also in the red plane I have painted the gauges in the instrument panel, and also the elevators and the flaps and whatnot now looks like used, which is what I wanted, because in the sea the paint and also the cloth, for whatever reason, things looks more used in the sea, even if when they are not as used as other things in other places. Now it's time also to varnish everything with glossy, including the propellers and the planes themselves, because we're gonna apply some extra details and also the decals. For said reason, it's a good idea to varnish with gloss, because gloss varnish also allows for a better fixing place for your decals. And I'm gonna use these fake iron crosses, which came from a Games Workshop Space Marine kit. They are Dark Angel crosses. I was wrong, it is the Black Templars, not the Dark Angels. Everything in Warhammer is green dark, and sometimes I forget about every single name of everything. And if you use one of these machines, which are designed to make holes, you can cut the borders in order to create a historically accurate German Iron Cross. In World War I, planes carry this type of things. Some people always will call you things for this type of symbology. Nevertheless, you can answer them. Hey, look, calm down. I'm not that thing that you are talking about. I'm just a Austro-Hungarian supremacist. Yeah, and that's all. And well, basically, I'm going to stick these decals on because they are the only ones that I have. I only have this kind of decals. In this scale, I didn't have any rough decals, any Italian or Romanian or Bulgarians, which I believe that they will look fantastically well. I think the Romanian or the Italian flag in detail will look fantastic, not gonna lie. Something that you should know when I am applying decals, or when you will apply decals, is the fact that you have some products to do this. I use a liquid called decal fixer and decal softener. First, to stick them, you should use the decal fix, but I use decal softener. The problem with the decal softener that should be applied after the decal fixer is the fact that sometimes, as the name implies, it softs the decal, and that means that sometimes also it softs or removes the paint. Right now I will apply some sponging with metallic color on the leading edge of the blades, and also I will use the excess of metallic in order to cover this kind of scratch that is in the boat plane. And if you are liking this, it's a good timing to give a like and subscribe. I will really appreciate. Right now I will use the excess of the metallic here on this scratch, which I could have covered with a super glue or putty, but I didn't because I like how it looks. It looks like something in the sea. Use a claw or a mandible in order to make that. I like it. Now I'm gonna show you how you can make burn effects without using an airbrush, and also using the airbrush. Depends on the material or the type of grill. In this case, I think it could be some kind of oil, so you need to apply that and then use your finger. Use a different finger each time if you do not want to ruin your entire model, and for this very reason, it's advisable to varnish the plane before. It's not going to be perfect, but it's gonna do the job, more or less. If you do not have nothing better, like for example, all of the weird oils that I have around, it's a good and easy technique. And right now I'm going to use the airbrush, the cool one, because I'm sure that this one is not going to spit any paint, not like my old one. And usually, to be honest, I'm afraid of this part in any model till this very moment, because till this very time, because this airbrush again, it's not spitting. I really like that. Also, I'm gonna paint burn effects on the guns of the Spitfire, which is red, in the red Spitfire, not in the chromed one, because the chromed one are already black and they don't need any kind of burn effect, obviously. I also have painted some burnt effects on the chromed one, and right now it's just time to paint some other details. For example, I'm going to use my oil brusher in order to make some dust in the wheels. First of all, you need to apply it generously. It will look horrible, don't matter. And later use thinner for oils, and it will look like real dust. Even if it floods other areas, doesn't matter. You can use the surface tension of the liquid itself and a clean brush. By the way, I'm not licking it, I'm using a paper, because this thing, it's oils generally are toxic, so they are not good for drinking, to be honest. And I'm cleaning the insides of the wheels, and more or less that is all, but we have to apply a few more things. I will use satin varnish, but not for the planes both will be glossy, but certain areas such as the wheels will be in matte varnish, and the satin varnish actually will be for the propellers and the reinforcements of the cockpit. basically, and that's all. Right now, it's the very moment in which we can glue the last details, which are the doors, the pig itself, and if you want, you can glue the cockpit. In my case, I do not have glued the cockpit, and in the red plane, I did not have glue one of the doors, and this allows me to remove said door and to put different pigs, because in this case, this model, the doors almost fit by pressure, so only one of the doors are actually glued. You have to move it a bit, and that's all. But again, keep this on mind. If you want it like a model, it will be perfect. If you want to use it as a tabletop thing, maybe you will need to glue more things. And by the way, I made a photo, I made a pic of my pig plane, the red one, the Manfred von Pichthofen one, and I use saturation, and I get this color, pink, and I thought this should not be this cool. Pink, it's not a color for boys, but my god, I really like it. And I had the idea to show you this book of planes that I have. You had a lot of historical camouflages out there, and if you're gonna paint a plane, mine or other plane, you should begin by a simple camouflage. You do not need to make an hyper complicated camouflage, basically aluminium, banana yellow like this B24. Black and red also is not a color only for the SR71, P51 Mason Chrome, it's good. And also pink was a historically accurate color, and for this reason I have created this color card to allow you to imagine how you could paint your own planes. You have the float planes, you have the boat planes with different colors and funny names, and the fighters. If you want those metallic colors, I'm not sure where you can get them. I guess Mick Jimenez and probably Gallieri, which by the way you should visit using my link. Maybe they made these colors, but with the basic colors and the airbrush that I have used, it will be more than enough, I guess. Although I really like the Aventus and the Titans and all of these things. They look futuristic and look like Men in Black guns. I want all of them. And also do not forget to visit Alacrán Miniatures in Cults 3D, type Alacrán Miniatures, and you will find my models there. And overall, that's all. This is the end result. Now you know more or less how you can paint these planes, how to paint these pigs, not in this video because they are very similar to the ones of the last video, and I insist, I don't know, not so many people have seen the last video. This is not, I'm not making as punishment to not make a video of how I painted the pigs, it's just because also by timing I cannot fit all of that information in a 42-minute long video. I also cannot add redundant things because people get bored, and now you know how to paint planes, which is also good, I think. And not only for these particular models, but speaking about these models, know that you can assemble them however you like, of course with certain limitations. And on the other hand, I also did this solely because you told me in the comments that you were interested in the planes. If I hadn't seen the comments, I wouldn't have done it. My idea was to do something completely different for this video. I actually wanted to make a tank and Soviet power armors. Who knows, maybe that will happen in the next video. But since you said so, here they are. So I hope you like them. And I insist, you can use these techniques for any other model. And the paints I use and the airbrush, why not? The important thing was that you asked for it, and here it is. Also, the idea of making these planes was in order to have some planes for my pigs, because it's almost impossible to find weird looking planes at this scale which do not look particularly from certain science fiction worlds. Yes, of course, you can find 1/72 scale Star Wars ships and also from other animes. I also found the idea for this video actually, when people began to ask about planes, was to make a Nausicaa gunship, but kit bashed into another completely different thing. That escalated quite quickly to be Spitfires. And overall, that's the story. And by the way, this is part of the secret modularity of this fighter. You can put the gear like up or down. Maybe you will need some fitting. I cannot design this so slim that could fit inside and also be opened and closed, because that will mean that I will have to make a less thick material for the wings, and probably as model they will crack. And also you can choose the closed or the opened gear. For the nose, maybe they will need a bit of sanding in order to click together that good. because again, resin has its own quirks and peculiarities. And the rear little wheel of the gear is there in order for the plane to not fall over the propeller as model and also as vehicle in real life or the fictional world in which these things are believable designs. I don't know, to be honest. And here you have the boat plane, which has the wheels completely filled. You can use them for the fighter if you want a flying model without so many complications. And here you have some beauty shots, just pics, in order for you to appreciate, to see the shading, the pre-shading that we have made in the red plane and in the fighter, in the aluminum looking one. Because the video will never catch enough details like the camera. And well, basically that's all. I guess I'm not forgetting nothing. Ah yes, those air intakes of the wing are 1 millimeter wide. So yeah, keep that on mind. This is the real scale of the thing. It will look gigantic in your screen, but it's not gigantic. And overall, that's all. Until the next one, and remember, a pig that doesn't fly, it's just a pig. Bye.